Welcome to Digital Performer. There are going to be 3 lessons. We had the last one Tuesday in class, but there were enough students absent that I thought it would be effective that if I just reviewed what we did in class and the steps to accomplish our goal, which is a piano, bass, and drum sequence. And then following that, we'll go to a second movie, which is the assignment for Thursday, which will be taking a standard MIDI file, taking it through, reassigning instruments, and taking it clear through to creating an MP3 that could be loaded into iTunes or sent to any kind of player. The third lesson will be on taking an audio file and reverse engineering it backwards in order to generate a part for in Finale, and that's our ultimate goal. Then the fourth period that we have left with our 4 classes we have, with the classes we have remaining, will be a review and for the final. So today is working on a piano, bass, and drums MIDI sequence. That's what we did in class, but we're going to review it again just so that you have it available to you. The first thing you need to do is we're going to be working in Digital Performer. You're going to go to the bottom of your screen and pull open the Digital Performer icon, and it's a blue circle with DP, stands for Digital Performer, inside it, and you're going to click on it. Now your screens and windows will look a little bit different than mine because my home studio is set up a little bit different, but I will try to configure it and tell you what the differences are so that you can successfully work. So I'm opening Digital Performer, and I'm actually going to this should open and look similar to what it does at your lab. Very good. So mine opened with an ARIA player. Yours at the lab is orange, dark oranges, and black. Mine silver and blue. But it's the same Garaton ARIA player. Mine is a newer version. You'll notice that we talked about in class, but I'll review it again. We were talking about MIDI. MIDI has 16 channels per instrument capabilities. So you'll see in this particular player there are 16 spots, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4 through 16. And I've set mine to default just like it does up in the lab with a Steinway piano and a Fusion drum kit. Now, our goal in this assignment is to have a piano, bass, and drums. And so we want to have a piano, a bass, and some drums. And so we're missing a few things here, and we have a few things already loaded. So the Steinway piano is what we're going to use to start with. If you wanted to change this, you just click on the name, and you come down here to Finale Default Bank. I have one extra in mind, but then you go over to the right, and you can choose any instrument you want. Keyboards, there's a Celeste, a harpsichord, a Steinway piano. A kind of a fun one down here in jazz. I think there's an electric piano in here someplace. Yeah, vintage electric piano if you'll be a little more true to jazz. But right now we're going to stay with the keyboard Steinway piano on spot 1. We talked about having piano, bass, and drums. So in spot 2, we're going to put a bass. So we click where it says Fusion Drum Kit. We come down to our Finale Default Bank. We come over here to Jazz is where the bass is residing. Upright bass. KS stands for key switch, and it will allow you to switch sounds with a key. We're not going to deal with that right now, but we're going to load the sound in. And so it loads in. We're doing great. Now in spot 3, we have piano, bass, and drums. So 3, we're going to put drums. So we come down to Finale Default Bank, down to Jazz. Down here is a Fusion drum kit, which is a pretty good kit to start with. I've experienced in the lab that sometimes it's good to have more than one track for drums. Those that aren't familiar with playing them on a keyboard, it's good to do a bass and a snare and then hi-hat on another track. So we're going to do in spot 4 another track of the exact same drum kit. We're going to come down here, click on where it says empty, go to the Finale Default Bank, and load in Fusion drum kit. So now we have 4 instruments loaded into our Garaton ARIA player, piano, bass, drums, and drums. Once you've loaded this in, you can come up here and you can close it. So I'm going to close it because we don't really need it anymore. And then I know you haven't seen any of this yet if you're new to the program, but there are some things that we're going to do just so that you become familiar. Yours may look a little different. Try to find them on the screen if you can. The first that I would like to do is I'd like to just manage our working environment a little bit different than what is in front of us. I particularly like to start off with not having too many options available to me. And right now I have tons. If you'll notice these tabs, track, sequence, drum, MIDI, quickscribe, those are all different ways of viewing the same material. I don't like seeing all these, so we're going to turn these off for right now until you become more familiar with what each of these are. So we're going to close this. And so all we're left is with our console window up at the top. Now we're going to come up to Digital Performer. We're going to go to Preferences. We're going to come down to where it says Consolidated Windows, which is the second choice at the very top. And we're going to turn off the Enable Consolidated Editing. That's where it combines all the windows into one. I think it's a little bit easier to follow if you don't use this at first. So again, turn off Consolidated Windows and then say Done when you're finished. Now we can come back up to the top of our program, the header where it says Project, and we're going to open Tracks. Shift-T is a shortcut, and this is where I like to work. Now you'll notice here we have in this particular window, it looks like an Excel spreadsheet, and you can zoom this in if you'd like by pushing these buttons down here in the right corner. You can zoom it out. It depends on how you like to work. After working with it for a while, the big font looks just a little gruesome, but maybe to start with, it might be easier to follow. I'm just zooming in and out. We have a few elements here that are just very, very important, and we're going to start with what all these mean. Each sequence has a conductor track. And that's where this program knows whether to play in 4/4, how fast to play, and what key to play in, actually. And then as you go down, there are different kind of tracks available to you, and there's little icons that tell you which track they are. This little square box is our sound module, and if we double-click in this box right here under track name, it will open up again our ARIA player in case we want it back to change more sounds. This is where we loaded Steinway piano, upright bass, fusion drum, fusion drum. We close that. Down below it, it says track 1. And well, what is track 1? It's hard to tell what it is unless you look to the left and see what is accessing it. We come over here going backwards. Under output, it says ARIA player, which is that player we had open. 1, which means you can have multiple ARIA players, but this means the first ARIA player that we've called up, and spot 1. So we know this is the piano because we put the piano in spot 1. So we're going to rename this, and the way you rename this is you hold down the Option key on your keyboard and you click, and it becomes typable, and we're going to type in piano. So now it says piano. Now if I want to play the piano, I keep going back to the left. I make sure that these blue are enabled, play enabled, because that will turn it off. And then going further to the left, that the record button is turned on. And so if that's happening, I should be able to, if the record button is turned on, I should be able to go to my keyboard and play and hear piano. Sure enough, I have piano. So I can play my piano. I'm happy. Okay, so we named it piano. We know it's piano because it's the ARIA player spot 1. Yours may look a little different than this, but I'll show you how to maneuver it. I go right below it, and I look to see what's playing here, and I kind of go backwards to see it's ARIA player 1, spot 2. So this is where piano, bass, and drums. So I know this is the bass. I think yours in the lab says drums here already. It's not drums, now it's bass. So we're going to option click it and say bass. That's very good. And so we can click to go to the left, click the record button in front of it, and we should have our bass. I'm very happy with that. Now, in your sequence, you have a couple more spots available, but in mine, on my screen, I'm out of spots because it changes next to an audio track, which has that one single line. And sometimes it'll say stereo audio track, which will have 2 lines, auxiliary tracks, and we'll talk about those later. But I need another track because I have 2 tracks of bass, of drums that I put in my sequence that I want to access. So I come up to the very top of my screen where it says project, and I say add track, and I want to add a MIDI track. And it's going to go in right below whatever I highlighted. Yours may have popped in if you did it down below, but we have this great little icon on the very left where it says move and these little buttons, you can actually drag them where you want them to be. And so I'm going to put it right below the bass. Then I'm going to look back and I'm going to start again. So I know this is supposed to be drums, so I come down under the track name. This is the one I just added. I'm going to option click this and say drum 1. I could have put bass and snare or whatever, but I'm just going to put drum 1. I work back to the left. It says, mine it says something different. Yours may say something different. We want it to say Aria Player 1, spot 3. So we just click our mouse on this name and we look for the Aria Player. And so we go down and say, nope, yep, there it is, Aria Player. And we come over to the right and say it's Aria Player 1, spot 3. Very good. And now I keep going back to the left. I highlight it. It's record enabled, so I should be able to hear drums if I play the low C and D on my keyboard. I like it. Okay, now I need another drum track because I remember we set up with 2 drum tracks. So I'm going to click on drum 1. The reason being because I want the track I add to come in right underneath this. And so by highlighting this, the next one will come underneath this. I come back up to project on the top and I add another MIDI track. I could have added a similar track, but that's okay. So I come down underneath it. It says track 1. I'm going to rename it by clicking option click to drum 2. I'm going to go back to the left and change it. It says mine says Giga 1. Yours may say something totally different, but we're going to click on that and go up so it says Aria Player 1, spot 4. Very good. And now we come over to the left, make sure it's record enabled. And this should sound just like drum 1. So we have 2 exact copies of drum 1 and 2. Now you notice my drum 2 is record enabled over here on the left. By using the up arrows, I can move that record button up and down so I don't have to click on it. It makes it a little bit faster so I can check my sounds. Piano, down arrow, bass, down arrow, drums, down arrow again, another drums. These other tracks are for other things and we're going to stop and let them set for now. So this is the end of our setup. We'll go to lesson 1 part B next, but I'm going to stop just so these movies don't get too big.